Hello everyone, welcome back to Goosebumps HorrorTown. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So, as you probably saw in my trailer, I wanted to get this done by the end of the year because I figured, oh, celebrate the end of the year off and go into this. In fact, I actually had some, wording down and had that all set up, but I was basically debating on whether or not if I should do this before or after the playthrough. I decided to be chronological and been like, okay, fine, I'll finish off 2020 and then talk about this. So that's what I did, and it took me this long to get to this point because, well, for a few different reasons. I'll talk more about that in our next playthrough. But long story short, I'm kind of prolonging this as much as I can because of the little updates we've been getting, but I digress. Today we're going to be looking into my opinions on 2020, the whole year in review, and my overall thoughts when it comes to some of this stuff here. I had 4 different categories going in depth. Now, to make my life easier, 2 of the major ones I've decided to put into a video format, so I'll talk about that in more or less perspective, but you know, I'll do that as we go along. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about how this would go. As you probably have noticed, every so often, every year, last year I kind of did something similar to this. However, I kind of didn't do a whole big job of it due to other situations that kind of went on. So I decided to take a different approach to this and actually designed it in this format instead to hopefully get this kind of going. So how I think I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be doing the lesser of the stuff and then kind of going into a video another, and then basically. So I'll simply show you my picks on what I think for prizes. Now the prizes are basically the overall grand prize as well as the book prize that was given to us. And I'm going to put the picture up right now, so this is what it looks like. So I figure I'll start off the first thing with the book prize, or book prize, but prizes in general. So I kind of split it off to being book prizes and the big prize, and there's not much to talk about. So this is what my opinions were the best and the worst of them. So let's talk about the worst ones. The worst book prize was the one for Monster Blood, which was this weird egg thing. The only reason I say this one to be the worst was because it didn't really fit with the whole theme of it, and there wasn't really much value when it came to it. Worst prize, in my opinion, for the whole events was probably the Class of 47, and to say the least, the Class of 47 wasn't too much the worst one as far as the theming goes. In fact, if anything, it was well themed, and I get what they were trying to do with that because it was fitting with the story. The only reason I put it there was because it wasn't really scary. It's just like a class memorial. I mean, it would have gone with the cake just because the cake had no theme whatsoever when it came to the first one. The only thing connecting it was that, oh, this is the game's second anniversary. But at least that cake is a bit scary than this. That's the only reason why I kind of put it down the way it did. So it's just my humble opinion. Anyways, the best book prize was that of, I think, The Cavern of No Returns, which was from the Shocker of Shock Street event. Which I think the only reason I put it there was because it kind of dropped, I think it dropped some scares, as well as it's just kind of a cool looking building that kind of fit with the overall theme of that episode. But yeah, there's that. And of course, best prize, in my opinion, this year was the Beast, the Basement, because it was literally a scene. So this is the only prize ever to have existed that actually allowed you to have a character. And this was a cool thing. It was one of my favorites, a lot of people's favorites too. Unfortunately, I don't think this would be something that'd be going forward because, you know, although the people who work on the game were like, this is a great thing, the company's like, nah, we need to make money after all. That's what I think. But maybe we might get something like this in the future, but we'll have to see how that goes. So, with that, I figure now we're going into gameplay. This was taken back. These were taken back sometime in the beginning of January before the update hit. So, I think it might be in between two of them. It's going to be weird because it's going to jump. But, anyways, we're going to jump into my opinions on the best characters and the worst characters, and I'll come back to you after that. So here is Past Grimm's opinion.
So in total of this game, we have about 24 new characters that got introduced into our town for 2020. Now out of these, there are 3 different categories. There's the unique, which are only exclusive to bundles, which I'm going to exclude for obvious reasons. There is the freemium, which we'll be taking a look into, and then there is the premiums. The premiums are going to be the more razzle-dazzle type of deal, but you'll get the picture. But if you want the honorable mentions of being disqualified for the unique ones, those are going to be Mark, Dr. Brownstein, and lastly, Curly. The reason why is because these guys are uniquely to a bundle and you can buy it, through the in-game economy means. So I'm going to exclude them. If you're curious, obviously Curly would have been the best one because of all the amount of stuff he's able to do. And it seems like he's worth it at the end of the day with the items they're giving him for it. So if you're curious, out of all the unique ones, he's probably the best. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about what was the best and worst of the free characters you would have gotten. So, the worst characters we've gotten for freemium are actually a tie. And it's because of one obvious reason, and I'm going to show you who they are. Unfortunately, the dishonor goes to Cuddles and Trigger, which is unfortunate because these were like the 2 iconic characters that were introduced like within the Monster Blood update. And the only reason these guys are so low or considered to be the worst ones is because they literally have no animations whatsoever. They just go into buildings and that's it. The only unique animations they have is their scare scenes, but even them, like Trigger probably has a lot more animations to him versus Cuddles is just running around. And they could have done a little bit more with it. I get it was based off of the book, and I get that. But like I've complained about during the beginning of the update, they could have added like slime to Cuddles' face just like in the book. But it's a missed opportunity. What can you do? So you might be curious on who was the best character, in my opinion, when it came to what was being added into the game. Well, that honor goes to Aaron. Now you might be wondering why Aaron is getting chosen as my best freemium character of this year. The reason why is because she was very achievable price-wise when her update came in, and I think was a shocker on Stock Street. Not only that, but the animation that she was given were unique enough and also kind of stands out from, who she is as her character-wise. And her story in the update was really well done, and it was actually more invested with who she is as a character. So really, really enjoyed that. And just in my personal opinion, why I feel like it was the best character as far as this goes. So now that we got that out of the way, now we're going to go into the top 3 best and worst premium characters. Now, the reason they're going for 3 is because there's a lot more to talk about with these characters, so I might as well go ahead and do that right now. So, we're going to go with the worst one. We're going to go from bottom to top. So, we're going to talk about this. So, who was the third worst character that was introduced to this game? Well, in my honest opinion, and according to what I looked at during the facts, sadly that dishonor goes to Evan. Now, you might be wondering why I felt like he was the third worst character that was added into this game. The main reason why is because Evan as a character, for the most part, he seems like he's, when he was introduced in the game, his price was a little bit about high. I'm saying high compared to all the other characters we got. I know, right? It's ironic. But the main reason is because even after his animations were put out, there wasn't really much items that he dropped that was considered useful at the time. And I don't know. I mean, compared to the other unique characters we've gotten, I feel like he could have been a little bit more out there and more like could have gone a little bit more with this. And yes, I know he's useful when it comes to the junkyard scene compared to, say, Andy. But with Andy, she at least helped out and kind of with the event when it came out at first in some way. Evan didn't really. And a lot of people like myself tend to see Evan and was like, why did I get you? Namely, that's the only reason why he's on third. Honestly, it's not that bad. Unlike our second place loser, who is Mr. Zawid. Mr. Zawid is the second worst character we have gotten into the game. Why is that? Well, when he first came in, he was a unique character, but because of the recent update with Be Afraid came in, you can actually physically buy him now. So, technically, he's no longer a unique, he's a premium character. Even in his premium state, which is not that bad of a price, his animations are not that bad, but the reason why he's so low on this list is because he is probably the worst villain of this update has gotten. Not just his update, but just the game in general. He is so bland as a character, which sucks. Because he could have had opportunity, and I did like what they were trying to do with him, but he just felt like there was a missed opportunity, right? It just underperformed. I don't know what it is about him. He just didn't seem like he was worth the price. He did one item, that was it. After that, he was kind of like, So he wasn't even worth the unique price at the time, and he had no other value besides just that. So it just kind of made you feel kind of useless afterwards. But the saving grace for this man is that he isn't the worst premium character we've gotten in this game. So, who is the worst premium character we have added in this game? Well, that dishonor, the biggest loser of 2020, character-wise, goes to the other unique character to the Be Afraid, Connor. He is by far the worst character that got added to this game because not only was he worth, like, his price was like high for what he does. His animations were completely like a joke. If you thought it was bad for someone like Rachel, who only had like one animation, at least it wasn't copy-pasted 4 times. I felt like that was a waste opportunity just to kind of do this over and over again. You could have saved space and actually have them do that cycle through different cycles, but no, it was just the same thing over and over again, except different logos. So it really just made him just not there. He didn't help much when the update came up with him. He only helped you in like a few updates, but even then it was like rarely, like if you didn't have him, you could have easily not use him. Right? If you didn't have him, you could have been good without him. But the worst part about him is he as a character didn't stand out. The event he came from, nothing about him stood out to me. If anything, like I said in the update, I'm trying to think of her name, but or one of his friends at the time, the one that was in there. Oh God, I can't think of her name. Give me a second. Emily, that was what it is. Emily, as a character, was better. She was like the main star of the game. That wasn't the point. It was supposed to be Connor. He was the one with the cards, but no, nothing about him stood out to me. Out of all the characters that got added to this game, he is 100% by far the worst one, and that's saying something. Like compared to the characters here, like Cuddles and Tricker, at least with them they were free, and they at least have some sort of charm to them. Evan has none. And yeah, I'll make this as point. He's basically a carbon copy. He looks exactly like if they took and this is the thing too I want to point out. The thing is, if you look at Billy Deep here and then we go all the way down to Connor, they look exactly the same kind of character. I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's probably the same artist and whatnot. And then that's not what I'm talking about. For some reason, they just look identical, like they're related. So everything about them it just failed in my apartment, unfortunately. And in my honest opinion, he is the worst character that I bought, or quote unquote had to buy, compared to all the other characters we've gotten. So that sucks. But now that we're done with the downers, let's talk about the ones that were good. So, let's talk about my top 3 best premium characters that was added to this game and my personal best and opinions. So, what was the 3rd best character that got added to the game? Well, this character, it was very unique due to the fact that there was a lot of stuff added with them. They were probably the first character we've gotten into the game, and they were the first original monster that was created in-house. Of course, I'm talking about Ellie. Ellie is, despite the controversy that the update she came from, oh boy, she is a very unique character. I love her animations. I love the fact that her design looks he looks nice. She has an interesting background and backstory, and she definitely fits in with the characteristics as you would think as a demon would look and do. And yeah, it's an interesting twist and tale. It's unfortunate the way it kind of ended out with her because of the cringe that came with the Valentine's Day, but in a weird way, I really did enjoy the Valentine's Day update just because of the cringe I had to suffer through. Although I was honest when I was being begrudging reading all those quotes. I was putting a smile at the same time, so it was just one of those, secondhand embarrassment. But hey, I really do dig this character. I'm happy that she was added to the game. I'm very intrigued to see more characters that they kind of make into the game that is based on, I guess, OCs, I guess you would call them. But we'll end up seeing what happens. The other thing, too, with her is that her scene and her as herself was available to be bought already, like, a while. So people were able to get this character before she was
taken off like near the beginning of the summer. So at least people had a lot of time to get her. So, you know, there's also that why I kind of like her as a third best character. So now we're going to talk about my second favorite character. And if you've seen my recent playthrough, you probably would have give a good guess at who that might be. I'm of course talking about Susie Snowflake. Come on, I cannot not include this person into the game. She was so unique in the story. She made me laugh in the sense that she made me smile. She has a really cute design to her. She looks exactly as you think and would picture her in the story. She's like this weird, cartoony Pippi Longstockings. But not only that, but so far in the lore of everything, she is probably the most overpowered character that we're able to manipulate anybody to do whatever she wants. The only thing that's basically holding her back is the fact that this character is so joyous and kind of cutesy that makes you kind of sick, like that kind of scary cute kind of deal. And it's more Christmassy type of thing. So there was that only gimmick to her that kind of made her kind of go, But honestly, I cannot not add her because she was a joy. I loved her. Yeah, she was $70, and yes, she wasn't really as helpful as compared to, say, other characters was, but screw it. You know, you buy in the dollars because you know that she was a certain character that kind of stood out, and her building that came with it was very unique as it stands out, so that's something I really did appreciate and I did like. Now, by this time, I would give you my what would I believe to be the best character, in my opinion, over the premium side. But before I do that, there is one honorable mention I'd like to bring up. And this is because this character, kind of like Ellie, was its own unique thing, but not really. But I want to mention it because I want to show highlight to this character because I feel like they at least deserve a mention. Mr. Chameleon, or the Shadow Lord, as himself. This guy has got to be one of the more unique characters that got added to this game, lore-wise, and the way they added his story in was really unique. I love the guy's animations. I love his spooky monster form. I love the fact that this guy, like the way he's walking is very unique too, compared to all the other characters walking around here. But the other thing that I like about this character is the fact that they took a character that literally had nothing, like absolutely zero, as far as content goes, and field and concept and any of that. Like, it was just basically a MacGuffin character for the story he came out of. They gave him a fleshed out story and made him into a worthy villain of sorts. And he really was someone to be kind of scared of, in a sense. Like, he was like literally the boogeyman. And I liked the way they kind of contrasted to be like Venom in the sense of their dynamic. But I digress. Honestly, I just wanted to mention this guy because, in my opinion, they did a good job fleshing this character out and making him kind of stand out and being unique. I don't know. I like him. I like what they did with him. And just my opinion at the end of the day. Right. So, let's do it. Let's find out. Who is the best character, premium-wise, in this game? Well, that honor goes to... Wait for it. R.B. Fairday. This is by far the best character that got added to this game. Not only with the unique animation he has, not only the way he walks around just kind of fits with his character, but his character himself just stood out to me. The way he was presented was perfect to how he was kind of described in the books.
Not only that, but he kind of comes off as being really creepy. And he basically stood up to Slappy out of all the people. Like, you could give Ellie some credit. Like, yeah, not Ellie, Susie some credit because she at least tricked Slappy in the sense of kind of like, oh, he got hypnotized, right? With Faraday, he basically just told him, like, I know what your fear is, dummy, and I'm going to use it against you. He has no fear. Except for one little vice near the end, which made sense, but it was like a little nice little kind of deal, right? You know, not everyone's immortal in a sense. So I liked that kind of angle to the story. But the real reason why I wanted to add him into the top was because when he was introduced into the game's update, he was game breaking. He basically was able to get you all the items you needed, no problems whatsoever. He helped you get everything just fine. Like Curly, he broke the event, but it was a good way because you were able to kind of achieve getting it. And out of all the characters that got weirdly priced, I feel like his price of being 700 is a lot, but I felt like it was justified. It was one of those things where you can justify the pricing for this character, and for that reason alone and everything else that was added to it, in my personal opinion, I feel Faraday was probably the best character they added to this game as far as playable characters go. So, that was my list of what I believe to be the best characters that was added in 2020. Now, I'm going to be showing you right now a picture of all the characters lists from best to worst on the tier list. The top being premium, second being the free, and the third one at the bottom there being the unique ones. To give you a good idea what I feel like overall. So, with that in mind, I'm now going to cut into the next partial here. So, I'm going to go back to my post-edit self now. Yeah, are you surprised? No, not really. But here is the best and the worst overall of the characters-wise. As you'll notice that I've actually placed some characters below. The way bottom there was simply characters that were exclusive or unique to the bundles. And then there's also the characters from the top here. Now, before I go and continue, I might as well throw in this offer in, or this video in here to talk about when it comes to Curly, Dr. Bronze, and Mark. Okay, so something I'll make a note of at the moment here during this recording. Curly and Dr. Brewer and whatnot, they're now available to be purchased, so they're no longer unique technically. Probably Brownstein and Mark in a way. But if you were to look at the monsters, or was it neighbors? Yeah, neighbors. Curly's in the crypt now. So he's technically a premium character. In that case, like, I will say that I do like Curly. I think he's probably one of the best characters that got added into this game for 2020. It was just that during that year, 2020, he was only available through a bundle, so he was technically unique, so he doesn't count with the premium. But, you know, just putting it out there, if you did like him, then I don't blame you for putting him as your number one. Yeah, so long story short, nowadays these characters are all available within a pack of sorts, so you could technically still get them. So it's not really, I'm just doing it as far as 2020 goes, and I wanted to keep it separate from premiums to freemiums to simply the character-wise whatnot. So I'll quickly more in depth talk about, I think I already talked about why exactly I hated some of the characters, but I'll talk more about when it came to the freemium ones. The worst characters, again, Cuddles and Trigger, I put them both together because they're both the same character at the end of the day. They had no animations, that's literally what it was. Trigger, I would say, is probably a bit better than Cuddles, because Cuddles' animation when he's big is nothing, while Trigger had a little bit of an animation, so at worst, Cuddles is the worst freemium character, if I had to pick one of the two, which is unfortunate, but, you know, it's what you get.
And then, of course, best freemium character was that of Erin because she was the most easily attainable. She had some interesting animations. She was part of the story. So, really, it was something that was well handled, in my opinion, when it came to this stuff. So, that's what I picked there. Of course, the worst character I picked overall was that of Connor because, as I said in there, it was completely useless for the most part. The animations were not the greatest, and he wasn't really a huge part in the story as far as the whole thing went. And Mr. Zarwood was also a very useless character, in my opinion. And just overall, my opinions, this whole graphic should pretty much give you an idea where I kind of view things as far as viability goes. And of course, the best characters, I had to pick the ones that were a little bit more memorable and more kind of out there to make me go, ooh, this is interesting. But yeah, RB Faraday was probably one of the best themed characters. He was well worth the value as what he was being priced at. He was very interesting as a character perspective went. His story was very well done, and it was a very well implemented of him being added to the game as far as the overall feeling goes. So that I will give them credit for, especially with everything at the end of the day. Of course, Susie is very well explained because of how unique and fun she is as far as the character went. And of course, when we went to talk about Ellie, the most controversial character, but it was really good to see an original character actually did very well at fitting in within the lore, especially since the whole story is a little bit but that I digress. We've already talked about that in the beginning of the year, but yeah, Ellie's certainly one of the third best characters I've had out there. And then of course you see the following progression overall here as far as things go. I did mention with Mr. Chameleon because how unique he was as a character, but yeah, I think this whole thing kind of said it itself, but that's just my feelings on the whole thing. So before we go on to the big runner-up stuff, I might as well go ahead and talk about the scenes of this year. So the scenes in question, how they work, is that they're separated from premium to the freemium to the actual exclusive for the update kind of deal. So we're gonna go now and show off the green, which is here. This is what it is. And yeah, so let's talk about the two bottom ones out of the way. Both the two sisters, Boo and Nightshade, they're on the bottom tier list here. Their only value of which one's worse, they're both the same at the end of the day, but really one of them is worse because they're a little bit more higher in value, which I don't see the value in that. But in just my opinion, I think they're a bit more free now, and I think you can get them, I believe. I might be mistaken. I know one of these buildings you can, but that's neither here or there. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But let's go ahead and talk about the freemium stuff before I go on talking about what I think was the best scene in the event. So the free stuff we get during this event, the worst one was the haunted the Jackal's Haunt or something like that. The reason why this was such a bad was just how much money it was worth to get it. It was very tedious to get. It was worth, the characters themselves are not that bad as far as scares go, but my god, was it a pain to get everything there. It just didn't feel right at all. It just had so much mess whatsoever. And it's just, everything about it was just so bad. And of course, the best one was that of the Beast, from the thing there. I mean, technically speaking, this isn't really a free thing because you can't really buy it. But technically, if you did, then yeah, best one. But if we're going to ignore that, we'll go to the second place one, which was the Gronks. The reason why I say the Gronks is because they're easy to get. They weren't very much when it came to spotting them. They're adorable. I don't know, just bias in my opinion. I feel like these were kind of the best fun ones to get as far as affordability went, and they're a little bit cute additions to the event as a whole and kind of fit the narrative of the Christmas event that happened in 2020. But yeah, we'll talk about that. Worst event spawns. That loser goes to the Poison Lake itself, because literally it was just a recolored of a swamp monster. of the mud monster, I should say. A blue variant. It's like, wow, how creative that thing is, right? Instead of actually having a monster from the book, it's just random monster from the pond that got stuck in the pool. It's so stupid. The thing it dropped is completely useless. It missed the mark entirely because honestly, the theme was supposed to be the lick itself, and there's nothing there to put value in there. So it just really just missed the mark. It's just like the whole Poison Lake is the theme of this update, and it is barely used at all. But let's just say you didn't want to put that as it because it's a cheat, because it's like, oh, it's the same character, what you expect. So okay, fine. So in that case, it would go to the second worst, which is the Internet Cafe. And the reason why this was a worst one was because the whole pricing scheme was just so stupid, and it just made no sense. It had so much, the whole thing was a mess. And if you did get the this book eventually into your special collection, you'll start to see why it made sense, because what I think happened was Dr. Brownson was supposed to be the summoning to the character of Spider, but as you notice, he and Mark were unique characters exclusive to bundles. So to make it fair, they decided to change it to a premium cost instead, meaning that this whole thing was just a big mess and no one liked it at all, and it just was 100% of a mess. It sucked. But of course, the best one in my opinion was that of the auditorium. Now, the reason why for the auditorium was because it was 100% of a drop rate. The spawn was actually pretty short for the most part, kind of like the beast, how short it was for them to summon in. So at that point, it was like something to go for. So I would say definitely was one of the more interesting characters as far as the whole pricing goes. It was very simple. You just put it and done. It was the only character that you didn't really need a whole lot of anything for, and the pricing and the time. So honestly, he was the best as handled as far as unique event spawns goes. So there's that there, and I'll keep it to there. Alright, now comes the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's talk about what was the best events of this year, the best updates overall. So I'll take it back to myself. This probably took place right about the time I did the recording for the Curly update, which was sometime after I did the update for the next one we're going to be looking into. But I digress. Let's have past me talk about what was the best updates in my opinion. Now, one thing I will say about this update is the fact that, in my opinion, during this time, I originally had a thing where I wanted to know what was going where, but sometime during this month, afterwards I was playing through this event again, I kind of changed the rating for one of them. You'll probably see which one it is at some point, but I talked on a little bit long enough. Let's just dive in and show what my opinion was for best update.
And now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It is time to talk about the updates and what was technically the best and worst of them. Technically, these are all events because that's what we've been having for the last 11 months. But hey, you know what? Updates are still the same thing. So before I show you my final list, I figured I might as well go ahead and do this kind of style where I'm going to tell you exactly the worst and the best, the top 3 and top 4. There is one dishonorable mention though I'm going to make note here, so I might as well talk about it now because this is something big and important. So what was the most disappointing event and what was the best one? We'll find out. Before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about our dishonorable mention. Our dishonorable mention unfortunately goes to Trick or Trap, our Halloween event of this year. It wasn't because of the update itself. In fact, this is why it's a dishonorable mention, because I feel iffy on it. It's either like the less of in the green tier, like very low green tier, and it's like high yellow tier. It's like in the middle of that. And the reason why is because they had great ideas, it had great like attentions. Everything about it seemed like it was on point, but the way they did everything else just fell apart, and it didn't help matters where everything started to become glitchy. So it just made this whole event seem so ruined and crap, but it was what it is. And yeah, unfortunately, this is why it's deserving this honorable mention. So it's not the worst event, but it certainly wasn't the best. So I figured I might as well mention this here. Right, so let's talk about a third worst event that we have on this update, which unfortunately goes to the Haunted School. Now, the thing with the Haunted School is that it's not a terrible event. It was actually pretty decent for what was available. It was just more of a kind of thing. Namely, I think it was because of the subject matter, but also it's mostly because of how everything was laid out. There wasn't really much items as far as uniqueness goes. You can only put like one down, and there was no way to kind of have one black and one white, or not, one black and one colored version of these items. It's like you pay it once and there you go. So you're just kind of stuck with these kind of stuff here. Not only that, but the freemium character Thalia was really hard to get for some players, because the amount of stuff you need for her was really a lot. This is probably the most anyone would have gotten this year as far as freemium characters go. So that was pretty bad, but you know, as a character herself, she's not that terrible, and Mr. Chameleon, as I mentioned before, was really great. So out of really, although this is like the third worst one, it's not really, because they're actually not that bad as far as the event goes, but unfortunately you had to make it fair for top threes. So yeah, this unfortunately fell flat, sadly. So what does that make for our second worst event? In second place for the worst event goes to Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. A lot of people would be surprised to hear this is my second pick for the worst one. And that's pretty surprising, first of all. This is sad because this was the one event that introduced a doppelganger of myself in the game as a way of kind of being honored. But the event was just so bad. The items they gave you was only for like one, and they were all unique, and the only thing you got to buy multiple of were stairs, which is like, why stairs of all things? So it was just so bad. It did help matters at all with how this whole thing started. And, you know, I think the biggest offenders were the fact that the two characters that were introduced were really terrible as far as blandness goes, and didn't feel so much as far as characters and development. It's everything about it just felt so off. It just was so bad. And what sucks about this is the fact that it could have had potential to be the best, but it didn't. It just failed miserably, and because of it, it just became one of the worst ones. Is the way you had to manage it. The fact that this place here, the Jekyll's Haunt, was one of the worst items you had to get, and it was mandatory in order to get this event type of thing. It was just all the way, it was all bad. Honestly, the only saving grace this event had was actually introducing that of the dragon, or in this case, Sparkles. Because honestly, that was the only best part about the event as far as the characters go. Then maybe the cameo on my part, but really it was... I don't know, this whole thing kind of felt weird. It's just so bad. Alright, so you might be thinking to yourself then, what is the worst event? Like, what really was the most bad event in this time? Well... let's see if you can guess this, but my pick for the worst event of this year goes to It came from the internet. A lot of people are probably surprised for me to say this, because one of them will say, hey, I mean, the characters that were introduced here were pretty good, right? And they were. I liked the characters introduced. The story was really well done. I liked everything about it. So why is this the worst event? It was because, well, 2 words. Half-baked. The event was obviously very rushed. It was poorly done, and it just didn't feel complete. The dialogue was all over the place. The characters were like the spawn was pretty bad with what you needed to do. Not only that, but you had not one but 2 exclusive characters that was locked behind a paywall. I mean, it was bad enough that you had like characters be locked like a unique. It's another to have 2 of them in there, and both of them needed for the spawn. So that just really sucked, the narrative wise, and it just, everything about it was just, it was a mess. It's sad because I did enjoy this, and this was supposed to be the game's 2nd anniversary, but it just, I don't know, this was just handled poorly. The part of me feels like maybe the reason why this happened the way was due to the pandemic that happened. I mean, it threw a lot of people off, but, you know, at the end of the day, we were given what we were given, and I have to review it as it is. And, you know, the only saving grace from it is the characters, the story, as well as the items they provided were fine. It just, everything about the event itself was just so bad as far as just, it didn't feel complete. It's the only event that doesn't have a logo, for crying out loud. I had to make my own logo for this update. That's bad. And I'm amateur stuff. It would have been even better if they did it, but nah, mine is just, it's okay, right? It's better than just looking at the basic Goosebumps HorrorTown logo, but yeah, that is my worst pick for the worst update that we had thus far, unfortunately. Now, that being said, we might as well go ahead and talk about the best events, shall we? But before we do that, we might as well give the honorable mention to what I thought was a good event that unfortunately didn't really make the cut. So let's go ahead and talk about that right now. My honorable mention will be going to Valentine's at Poison Lake. This event was probably our first event we kind of got this year. My god, was it so corny and just, it was so cringy, and you could feel the pain that I had to do during my whole review. It introduced Ellie, which was a little bit of a controversy within herself, but honestly, I enjoyed the event. I enjoyed the stupidness of it. I enjoyed the items that we had gotten from it. Everything about it was just so nice and classic and just cheery. It just, everything of it was just, I don't know, it was kind of perfect for what it was. And it was interesting is that it took an update of this type and make it into a whole new thing. And kind of made it an interesting story that could have probably be something Orwell would have wrote if it was a little bit more edgier or cringier, you know, it's just whatever. The only downside with this update, I will say, is that the spawn scene for this event was a copy paste for it. Just the mud monster and the whole Poison Lake aspect was very underwhelmed. I mean, I will give it credit. The summoning portal was probably what you would look at as the actual event spawn. But other than that, everything about it, everything else is just kind of like, you know, it could have been better, but it is what it is. So let's talk about what was the best updates as far as things go. So in third place, what I feel like what was the best update that came up in third place is the Beast from the East. Well, I mean, technically called the Beast Beneath the Sink, but come on, it was Beast from the East, okay? That was all this event was, Beast from the East. I think for the most part, making it into a St. Patrick's Day event was somewhat an interesting angle, but the reason why I liked this event, if anything, was just how they set everything up. They were pretty faithful to the book overall. I love the decorations they kind of provided with making the scenery and the weird forest that we saw within Jim Jacobus's work cover for the book itself, the iconic one we know. The having the beast be a rat bear, I guess, as a way to kind of pay tribute to the fact that this update was taking place during the year of the rat. And just everything about it just was so great, you know. Although, yeah, the Beneath the Sink wasn't really an update. We did get some items from it. The items themselves were cool. We got 2 new characters, which was Nat and Pat. And it's interesting how they've changed Nat to be a little bit more of a female, while Pat was that, just to make them different, I think. Which, you know, I like. But the other thing, too, that I like is the fact they make these 2 houses kind of combine together to make this interesting looking design. But they can be on their own. So I kind of like the style, like what they did here. This was like really clever of them to do. I don't know, just everything about this was just perfectly handled. I liked everything, and I'm a bit of a sucker because, yeah, the grand prize was literally this scene here, which was really great. And I don't know, everything about it was just perfect, in my opinion, as far as when it came to how they've handled everything. So that's that there. So let's talk about what I found to be my second favorite, the 12 Screams of Christmas. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I decided to pick this as my second favorite update. It was like the last of the season, but the way they handled everything, like this story was something we were waiting to see for a long time now. And it was just one of the most charming, yet one of the most weird stories we've ever gotten in this game. You know, we've gotten, you know, the Gronks that got made an appearance. We finally got Mr. Piccolo after a year of nothing. But let's be honest, the real reason this update was so great was because of Susie. Susie right here is probably one of the best things that came out of this game as far as this update goes, because she is such a character, and I don't know what it is about her and the design and everything about it. She looks like the team nailed the way she looks. Whenever you thought of Susie Snowflakes when you read the book, this is immediately something you would think of. And the character and personality was on point. It just, everything about it just made everything more cheerful. So, like how we started the beginning of the year with me being cringy with the whole ooh kind of thing, this one made me more smiled for the stupidity of just how making everything just joyful. So it's the same kind of thing where we just make everything just worse, but she was less cringy as, say, Ellie's was. But other than that, I really do like her as a character. She had really nice animations. Everything like that. The items that were introduced were actually pretty nice. The buildings decoration-wise was pretty cool as well. And the story, although not 100% focused on the 12 Screams, we do have the main Mr. Marcus character, the Scene, as well as Mr. Piccolo. And they kind of were close to being faithful to the book as far as the main gist of the story goes. And really, this is like one of those interesting Christmas tales that they've decided to change. You know, like they've done a pretty good job making Christmas into like horror in the sense and actually fit the spirit of it. And yeah, everything they added with this was really the best in my opinion. However, that being said, you might be curious in what I thought was my number one pick for this update. What was the best update that was introduced in this game? Well, in my opinion, the best update that we've gotten in this game so far is a shocker on Shock Street. This has gotta be one of the best updates they've done this year, and what a way to kind of make the reputation. Last August, back in 2019, was probably one of the worst updates, and it was a movie theme, and they decided to redeem it with this update, and they've nailed it with everything. They nailed the story, they nailed the characters, they nailed the inspiration to the items, like the whole thing about it. It was faithful to the book of everything. Not only that, but they've also added a character by the name of R.D. Faraday. He is probably one of the most game-breaking characters. Besides Curly, he was actually very achievable to get, and he basically just got you everything you needed, and then some. And he's a character on with himself, and I certainly love him as a character. Ellie was a great character that you got, which was like pretty easy to get with 500 of the event currency, or 5,000 I should say, which is very achievable. A lot of people got her. She also has some interesting animations, and just everything about this just fit well. You know, got the nod to Fear, like the Fright Camp, and a lot of this stuff. Like, if you've read through any of R.B. Faraday's fictional movies, as well as the Shocker on Shock Street series, you would know that these things were little nods, like Shockdro's House of Shocks, the, Cavern of No Return, the Vacation of Endless Doom. Like, all this is a nod to a fictional book. The Conga the Animal Vampire, the Prisoners of the Vampire King, and Beast with Three Brains. And what's great about all these things is that they actually dropped scares. Like, these items were like stuff to grab, and it actually helped you with the scares and everything like that. Now, one thing I forgot to mention during my update when it came to the Christmas one is that this and the Christmas one does something important. They actually give you items that actually drops you a bit of the event currency here. Not the event currency, the scarometer stuff, which is like one of the key features with this game as far as the update and upgrade goes. But the other thing too is that both this update and the 12 Screams introduce a grand prize item that was animated. We have rarely got to see animations been done before as far as game goes. I remember 2019 they had huge issues with trying to get animations, but yet they nailed it with just like little nods stuff here, and then the little spooky ghost that's got added to the Christmas tree. But I honestly, the story was great. The everything about it was just on point. Like anything else, this has got to be one of the best ways they did the update. They were faithful to the book. They made it very interesting to do all this stuff. It just, everything about it was just perfect. And, if they ever done updates in the future, doing something like this would really help it out. But that's just my thing. That's my opinion. So, I don't know. It would be interesting to see what you're thinking of this. But with that, I will go and show you my full list, and we'll discuss more further with other key information.
And just like I said before, here is the update in question. This was the best and worst updates thus far, and I hoped my explanation to them actually made sense as far as the whole thing went. So I won't dive much into deeper there. However, I will talk about the bottom part here. You might be noticing, why are the book specials here? Well, I wanted to go ahead and say that what was the best value overall this year that was offered to us, and honestly, the worst one was Welcome to Dead House because of what it was been offering. And of course, the best one was the Haunted Halloween. Now, what's funny about it is that what you'll find out is the Haunted Halloween poster used the actual poster for the movie. However, they ended up recreating it, which I have a feeling I might know why that is, but I will show that off near the end of the next update, which you probably got a little bit of a hint to if you've watched a little bit of the video. But I digress. Let's talk about the events in general. So from worst to best, as I talked about before, the worst one in my opinion was it came from the internet, and the reason why I said so was just because of the fact that it was a complete mess. I feel like this partially may have something to do with the virus that is going on still right now, and ironic, right? An update about a virus and the worst one because of a virus. It's mostly due to the fact that it just was a mess, like I described. It just had no consistency. It was it just didn't flow well. And I will happy to say that the update for that one to come in the special book fixed everything, so it's no longer that issue. But if at all, if you don't want to count that, then yeah, be afraid, be very afraid. It's certainly the worst one. It had the worst characters, it had the worst story, it had the worst things, everything about it was just bad. And I don't think it was the politics, it was just the characters involved. It was just boring. I didn't like it. And a lot of people didn't like it, and I had some issues with it too. This was the first time that we had the whole, oh, you need the special prize in order to continue with the story gimmick, which started to become a thing, which was really annoying. I get why, but it was still very annoying to see, because it used to be an option, now it's an obligation to, which is stupid. And of course, the best one in my opinion was a Shocker on Sock Street. Partially I think it was because overall it was the most well themed out of everything together. Now I will talk about this because I will show this off near the end of overall the stuff. But partially I switched the Beast from the East with the 12 Screams of Christmas, so it used to be third and second, and I switched them. Reason why was because when I was doing the video edits for the 12 Screams of Christmas, I realized how much fun 12 Screams was compared to the other game, the other one. Although the other one was really well themed, I feel like overall I think the 12 Screams was probably better handle as far as what was being offered and all that other update stuff. And like the Soccer and Sock Street, a lot of the items were scares, which actually helped a lot compared to the items in question. So although Beast from the East, yes, I'm calling it that, I'm not calling it Beast Beneath the Sink, because it's there's no beneath the sink. It had the best theming, but I feel like there was more to offer there. And of course, Shocker on Shock Street was overall best presented. It was very much adapted well into the story. It basically all of the nuance. It had some of the, like, if you were into the whole lore of Goosebumps, it had a little bit of a nod to the rides being the fake movies that was mentioned in them. It was really a well done overall execution of the whole thing, and that's why I made it the best one in my opinion. But funny enough, when I went into the rating system, or what I found out through people, was that according to them, the worst update for most people who voted turned out to be Chicken Chicken. Which is a surprise to me, but I can probably see why that was the case. And the best event, and this surprised me, to 12 Screams of Christmas. Also, for some reason, Trick or Treat is tied with Valentine's at Poison Lake. So now it's like anybody, if anything happens to this game in the future and it had this weird monetization scheme and people complain, I can say, well, you guys liked Trick or Treat, so that's why you can't complain about that anymore. So sorry about that. Yeah, apparently Trick or Treat was the best. And I feel like the reason that was the only case was because, one, Halloween, and two, and the biggest one, because Curly the Skeleton was involved. And I think that was the only big reason why that was a whole thing there. But yeah, that is it for that. Now I'm going to show you the overall rating system. So this is where everything is. So out of all the updates we've had, altogether, I believe this was about, I think we're on like the 23rd or something like that. I don't know. I'm not good with math. It's been a while. But anyways, here is the final conclusion to everything here. So like I said before, most of the, this year has been really good as far as update went. As you'll see, and I'll highlight this here, and as you saw, you can see where things were changed with the 12 Screams and the Beast Beneath the Sink. But as you'll see, most of the worst ones are like the higher top, while the best one, like there was a lot more best than there was worse, and even the worst ones were kind of like leveled. There weren't, nothing went down below the red line, so we're on that good terms there. So yeah, overall I think this is the rating system, so this is what it was. So Shocker on Shock Street is now my third favorite update overall. Nothing has passed Haunted Halloween yet, and it's going to be very hard to, because that update offered so much, a lot more. And I think because Hunt Valentine's Night Fever was probably something like, I think Valentine's of Poison Lake had somewhat a similar idea, but then they kind of changed it, so then it kind of dropped a few levels after that. So it's just, the whole thing there just kind of, it was whatever. But yeah, that's overall that there. And that's it. That's my whole rating system. So let me know down below what you think. Do you agree or disagree with my list? And what was your favorite or worst ones? And what would you like to see in the future? I'd like to know. But yeah, that is done, and I had fun with that. But now we're going to move on to something new. We're going to move on to the new year and see their new updates. That is the only update we've gotten, and I'll be sad to talk about that, but we'll discuss that when we get to that bridge. But for now, we're not at that horizon yet. So thank you for watching this video. I've been Grim, and I'll be seeing you next time for more Goosebumps HorrorTown playthrough. So until then, hope you have a happy new year.